Here's a Pulitzer Prize-winning drama, Sweat by Lynn Nottage, in one sentence. Two guys walk into a bar and beat up another guy. Oh, and another guy that has nothing to do with the fight accidentally gets his brain damaged in the process. What do you mean that explains nothing about the play? Okay, fine. Here's a better summary. Sweat is a play set in Reading, Pennsylvania during the years 2000 and 2008. It follows a group of friends and family, mainly through their appearances at the town's local bar. The town of Reading is well past its glory days. Historically a blue-collar working town, it's bustling with business and people, until NAFTA is signed and ratified by the Bush administration in 1992. From then on, it's a twisting, turning ride downhill for Reading, like the world's saddest slide. Local manufacturing jobs ditch town for cheaper labor in Mexico, and local businesses follow because of the lack of business, leaving Reading in a state of urban decay. Olsted's is a factory that employs most of the cast. When things at Olsted's go down, people getting fired, new people getting hired, things start going down with the cast. Fingers are pointed, blame is cast, and scapegoats are designated with low-key racist undertones. Because come on, conveniently all the minorities are the cause of your problems. Friendship and dreams are ruined, people are beat up, uninvolved people given brain damage for life. Sweat utilizes a neat narrative trick at the beginning of each scene, where a snippet of the local news and national news is read before the scene starts. The play's timeline is non-chronological, with consecutive scenes jumping from the past, 2000, to the present, 2008, and these help contextualize the time period's social and political climate. Let's go through some of the notable ones. From Act 1, Scene 2. January 18, 2000. In the news, American think tanks report that the booming stock market is widening the income gap between the poorest and richest U.S. families. Reading passes an aggressive dog ordinance to regulate ownership of certain pet breeds, including pit bulls. So with this, we're already setting a bit of a tone for the rest of the play with a mention of income inequality. Income inequality and distance between the classes is a recurring theme throughout the play. It's mentioned that none of the floor workers at Olsted's know the supervisors, and that the supervisors are all affluent, educated people who think too highly of themselves to speak to the floor workers. Bartender and previous floor worker Stan complains about this, saying, "You don't see the young guys out there. They find it offensive to be on the floor with their Wharton MBAs." Moving on to the next news segment. From Act 1, Scene 4. March 2, 2000. In the news, in the Republican presidential debate, Alan Keyes, John McCain, and George Bush. In Reading, an overnight fire leaves a mother with 5 children homeless. Baldwin Hardware Corporation, a brass hardware maker, announces plans to open a new 280,000 square foot facility in Leesport. Now here's a clear example of a recurring pattern in the news reports. The national news will bring up something related to either politics or the economy. In this case, it's both. Politics are brought up because the government is responsible for Reading and its citizens with the decisions it makes, with its ratification of NAFTA contributing to the town's current desolation. The economy is brought up because that is what drives the decisions of these officials. Taking NAFTA as an example again, the policy was ratified by the US because it would grow the national economy. The human impact of lost domestic jobs in industrial towns like Reading wasn't taken into full account during the process. Meanwhile, the local Reading news will contrast this with some terrible news about the area, like people dying, or in this case, a fire. These two headlines in juxtaposition send a message. The country's politicians are ignorant to the struggles of working people and only see them as factors that play into economic figures that either go up or down. Throughout the play, we learn all about the characters, their dreams, their struggles, their conflicts, their humanity. We get invested in them as people in the stories that their actions tell. But the headlines being read at the start of every scene remind us that in the bigger picture, the people making big decisions aren't seeing this side of the story and have nothing but dollar signs in their eyes. During the play's climax, Jason and Chris, two of our main characters, which at this point are locked out of the factory, attack Oscar, who has crossed the union line to work there, because they think he played a part in taking their jobs. Stan gets caught up in the fuss and suffers a life-altering brain injury. Immediately after this tragic event plays out, the scene ends, and a news segment is read as an interlude between scenes. September 24, 2008. In the news, President Bush prepares to present a very dire warning to the American people. He will suggest that unless Congress approves a $700 billion bailout for Wall Street, and it is approved within a matter of only a few days, there will be ominous consequences for the entire U.S. economy and for millions of Americans. Hearing this after this previous scene gives viewers some serious whiplash. We've been watching these working people struggle with income inequality and poverty and unemployment and fight each other for opportunity for the entire play. We just saw all of that struggle culminate into a life-ruining fight. Then, this headline is read out and it's a flash of reality, driving home once again that all these events depicted in the play, The lives of working class people are completely invisible to the people in charge of making decisions. Instead of doing something to directly benefit workers in time of crisis, like the 2008 recession, the government throws money at businesses in Wall Street instead, which we've been seeing screw over our cast for the entire play. Stan brings up this lack of awareness politicians have for the plight of the working class, saying, "I watch these politicians talking BS and I get no sense that they even know what's going on, beyond the windshield of their cars as they speed past." I could go over more, but all of these news segments are very similar, and all serve to show the distance between the priorities of the nation and the lives of working class people. What they ultimately communicate is that the very core of Sweat is a Marxist class struggle. Time after time again, the bourgeoisie, in this case factory owners and Wall Street stakeholders, benefit by making decisions at the expense of the proletariat, in this case floor workers and other entry-level workers such as Oscar. And when factory owners make these decisions, pivoting to cheaper labor and laying off previous workers, those previous workers misdirect their blame on the new workers instead of the factory owners. This is illustrated with everyone's feud with Oscar, initially on account of his Latin ethnicity connecting him to the Mexican workers that they perceive as taking their jobs, and later when he crosses the picket line to work at the factory. This unproductive scapegoating also occurs when Cynthia, a factory worker and friend of the cast, gets promoted to supervisor and her friends turn against her and blame her for all the layoffs. Cynthia comments on the distance between supervisors and the floor workers, saying, 24 years, and I can't remember talking to anyone in the office except to do paperwork. Later on, when everyone is pointing fingers at her for the layoff, she laments, I wonder if they gave me this job on purpose, pin a target on me so they can stay in their air-conditioned offices. The distance between the supervisors and the floor workers is strategic. When people are looking for other people to blame for changes at the factory, they all blame Cynthia, an individual, rather than the collective that made the change, because she's the only familiar face working in the department. In both Oscar and Cynthia's cases, their scapegoating is also fueled by racial tensions, with Oscar being Puerto Rican and Cynthia being black. They're seen as outside of the group, aka white people, and are easier to ostracize for this. In Marxist theory, the proletariat are always getting the short end of the stick, while the bourgeoisie get rich off their labor. The only way for proletariats to stop being exploited and to achieve equality is to overthrow the inverted triangle class structure, to have a class revolution. But this can only happen if all the proletariats are on the same page and not divided. The bourgeoisie don't want the class structure that benefits them dismantled, so they do everything they can to sow conflict among the proletariats. They keep their distance and stay anonymous so that the proletariat don't know that they're a factor in their problems. They prey on pre-existing divisions within society, like racism and xenophobia, turning cracks into rifts that prevent proletariats from collectivizing. One of the most obvious examples of this in the play is when Osted's workers are locked out, and Oscar crosses the line to work at the factory, citing everyone's racism toward him, and his exclusion from the Reading community as giving him no reason to cooperate with the workers' protest. Like he says, they ain't my friends. They don't come into my house and water my plants. The entire play of Sweat is a case study in these invisible tactics and how the government even feeds into it with the policies they put into place, which prioritize economic figures over real people. The lack of harmony between the working class is exploited and strengthened by the bourgeoisie, resulting in horrific human impacts, like Stan becoming brain damaged and Jason and Chris going to jail, all while the bourgeoisie and the government celebrate their revenues going up. However, the play ends on a hopeful note. Jason and Chris meet up with Oscar looking to apologize. Stan comes in, and the two face the consequences of their actions when they notice his injury from their fight. As the script describes this moment, the four men, uneasy in their bodies, await the next moment in a fractured togetherness. At the end of the day, Sweat is a story about class conflict, exploitation, the despair that proletariats go through at the hands of the bourgeoisie, and the powers that feed into their actions. But it's also about humanity, the proletariats, and how we can all recover from the bourgeoisie's tactics and reconnect as fellow human beings once again.